The void of space was punctuated by the silent menace of the Zorgonian warcruiser, the Claw of Xylar. Its hull, a dull gray that absorbed rather than reflected starlight, was a testament to Zorgonian pragmatism. Aesthetics were secondary to efficient planetary subjugation. Within its metallic bowels, a crew of rigorously trained, bioengineered Zorgonians operated with the precision of a well-oiled, if slightly grumpy machine. Every action, every order, every nutrient paste ration was governed by the sacred, unbreakable protocols etched into their very being. To a Zorgonian, life was a complex flowchart, deviations from which resulted in existential dread, or worse, a mandatory re-education seminar. Their captain, a particularly dour specimen named Glargon 7, took immense pride in his vessel's flawless adherence to these protocols. Little did he know, the universe was about to introduce a variable so chaotic, so human, that it would threaten to unravel the very fabric of Zorgonian order. The source of this impending disruption was currently residing in Holding Cell 7B, a standard-issue containment unit designed for unruly space pirates and unregistered pleasure bots. Its current occupant was anything but a single, rather unremarkable human male named Kevin. He'd been scooped up from a derelict freighter during a routine patrol, a minor inconvenience in the grand scheme of Zorgonian galactic domination. Kevin, however, seemed remarkably unfazed by his predicament. In fact, one might even say he appeared bored. This, more than any weapon or alien technology, was the Zorgonians' first clue that they might have underestimated their captive. The stage was set for a clash of civilizations, a battle not of lasers and explosions, but of cultural absurdities and profoundly different approaches to the concept of taking things seriously. The holding cell was, as one might expect on a Zorgonian warship utterly devoid of charm. Cold, metallic, and smelling faintly of ozone and disinfectant, it was the epitome of sterile efficiency. Kevin, lounging on the provided cot, surveyed his surroundings with a critical eye, like a hotel reviewer about to unleash a scathing online post. "Bit minimalist, innit?" he muttered to the nearest security camera, earning him only a silent, unblinking stare. He'd tried bouncing a nutrient bar off the wall to test its acoustic properties, but that just resulted in a stain that, he suspected, would outlive the Zorgonian Empire. Shortly, the door hissed open, revealing 2 Zorgonian guards. Their exoskeletons gleamed under the harsh lighting, their multifaceted eyes conveying an unsettling lack of emotion. They gestured curtly with their plasma rifles, indicating that Kevin should precede them. "Right then, off we toddle," Kevin said, cheerfully falling into step between them. The corridors of the Claw of Xylar were a testament to utilitarian design. Identical gray panels lined the walls, punctuated by blinking lights and the occasional hissing vent. Zorgonian crew members strode purposefully along the passageways, their movements precise and synchronized, like extras in a low-budget sci-fi film. Kevin, in contrast, shuffled along with a distinctly un-Zorgonian gait, hands in his pockets whistling a jaunty tune. The Zorgonians flanking him exchanged confused glances, their internal processors struggling to reconcile this lackadaisical attitude with the gravity of the situation. This human was supposed to be terrified, demoralized, possibly even offering up valuable intelligence in exchange for leniency. Instead, he seemed to be enjoying a leisurely stroll. "So," Kevin began, breaking the tense silence, "you guys got like a coffee shop on this thing? Or is it strictly nutrient paste all the way?" The guards paused, their programming momentarily stalled by the unexpected query. One of them emitted a low, guttural growl, presumably the Zorgonian equivalent of silence. Kevin merely shrugged. "Just askin'," he replied, his voice laced with a hint of amusement. The cultural chasm was widening, and the Zorgonians were beginning to feel distinctly uncomfortable. The interrogation chamber was a study in Zorgonian efficiency. Polished obsidian walls reflected the harsh glare of overhead luminaries, casting stark shadows that danced with every movement. A massive trapezoidal table dominated the center of the room, its surface gleaming like the eyes of a predatory insect. 2 Zorgonian interrogators, their exoskeletons polished to a mirror sheen, sat rigidly behind it. They began the ritual with practiced precision. "Human designation, Kevin," one intoned, his voice a synthesized monotone that resonated through the chamber. "You have been apprehended for unauthorized presence within Zorgonian space. Your transgressions will be quantified, your motives will be dissected, and your ultimate fate will be determined by the Council of Elders." Kevin, who had been examining his fingernails with detached interest, finally looked up. "Right. So, paperwork first, is it? Gotta love bureaucracy, even in space." He leaned back in his chair, a gesture that sent a ripple of unease through the interrogators. This was not the behavior of a repentant prisoner. "You will cease your frivolous commentary," barked the second interrogator, his voice rising in pitch. "This is a tribunal of ascertainment. You will answer truthfully and without evasion. Your cooperation will expedite the process of your—" He paused, searching for the appropriate term, disposal. Kevin stifled a yawn. "Look, mate, I'm all for expediting things. But before we get into the whole disposal thing, I've got a question of my own. It's been bugging me since I got here." The Zorgonians exchanged wary glances. "Yes?" One of them finally prompted, his voice tight with suspicion. "This ship?" Kevin said, gesturing vaguely around the room. "It's massive, right? I mean, gotta be hundreds of Zorgonians running around doing whatever it is you guys do. So what I'm wondering is, do you have a decent coffee maker on board? I'm talking like an industrial strength, brews 10 gallons at a time kind of thing. 'Cause that nutrient sludge you're serving up? Let's just say it's not exactly hitting the spot." The interrogators stared at him, their multifaceted eyes wide with disbelief. The Tribunal of Ascertainment was designed to extract vital intelligence, to uncover hidden agendas, to probe the deepest recesses of the subject's mind. It was not designed to handle requests for caffeinated beverages. "Coffee?" One of them finally managed to stammer, his voice cracking slightly. You are concerned about the availability of coffee?" Kevin nodded earnestly. "Absolutely. Priorities, people. Gotta have my priorities. Can't exactly plan a daring escape on an empty stomach, can I?" The Zorgonians fell silent, their internal processors whirring furiously as they attempted to make sense of this bizarre human. Was this some kind of elaborate ruse? A subtle form of psychological warfare? Or was this Kevin character simply insane? Whatever the explanation, one thing was clear. This interrogation was not going according to plan. The rigid structure of their protocols was beginning to crack under the weight of Kevin's utter lack of concern. The Zorgonians, after much internal deliberation and a frantic consultation with the ship's psychologist, a bioluminescent mollusk named Glargon 7, decided that a show of hospitality might be in order. Perhaps a well-fed prisoner was more cooperative. So Kevin was escorted to the mess hall. The mess hall was a vast, echoing chamber, meticulously arranged with rows upon rows of identical feeding stations. Each station consisted of a small concave dish and a dispensing nozzle that dripped a viscous gray substance known as nutrient sludge into the dish at precisely calibrated intervals. The Zorgonians, clad in their battle armor, stood rigidly at their stations, consuming the sludge with an air of grim determination. It was less a meal and more a fuel stop. Kevin surveyed the scene with a raised eyebrow. "Charming," he muttered. "Reminds me of my college cafeteria, only less appetizing." He picked up his dish of nutrient sludge and sniffed it cautiously. The aroma was indescribable, a sort of metallic, vaguely organic scent that hinted at both decay and despair. The Zorgonian officer overseeing Kevin's meal, a particularly stern-looking specimen named Galactic 4, watched him with suspicion. The nutrient sludge is formulated to provide optimal caloric intake and sustain all necessary biological functions, Galactic 4 stated flatly. "It is a privilege to receive sustenance from the collective." Kevin chuckled. "Right, a privilege. I'll try to contain my excitement." He took a tentative spoonful of the sludge. His face immediately contorted. He swallowed with visible effort. "Okay, yeah, no, that's something else." He looked around, seemingly searching for something. Glarok 4 narrowed his eyes. What is your purpose, human? Why do you delay the consumption of your allocated nutrients? Kevin grinned and reached into his pocket. He pulled out what appeared to be an ordinary ballpoint pen. Glarok 4 tensed. Relax, mate, Kevin said, popping the pen apart. Just gonna add a little zest to this culinary masterpiece. Before Glarok 4 could react, Kevin began using the hollow plastic tube of the pen to vigorously stir the sludge. He whirled it around, creating a miniature vortex of gray goo. The surrounding Zorgonians paused their consumption, their multifaceted eyes fixated on the human's bizarre ritual. A low murmur rippled through the mess hall. Stirring the sludge? It was unheard of, unthinkable. The nutrient sludge was a precisely engineered substance, designed to be consumed in its unaltered state. To tamper with it was an act of culinary heresy. Kevin, oblivious to the growing consternation, continued to stir with gusto. Gotta aerate it, you know? Get some air in there. Lighten it up a bit. He added a few rapid flicks of the wrist for good measure. There, now who's hungry? He took another spoonful, his expression only marginally improved. Well, it's different. Still tastes like sadness, though. Glarok 4, his exoskeleton practically vibrating with indignation, strode towards Kevin. Human, cease this desecration. At once! You are violating the sanctity of the nutrient sludge. Kevin looked up, feigning innocence. Desecration? I'm just trying to make it palatable. You guys should try it. A little stir goes a long way. He offered the dish to Glarok 4. Glarok 4 recoiled as if presented with a venomous creature. I will not partake in your altered concoction. This is an outrage. Guards, seize him. But before the guards could respond, a curious thing happened. One of the younger Zorgonians, a low-ranking ensign named Flarp 9, hesitantly approached Kevin's station. He eyed the stirred sludge with a mixture of revulsion and fascination. He had always found the nutrient sludge uninspiring. But now, witnessing Kevin's audacious act of culinary rebellion, a spark of curiosity ignited within his segmented heart. He reached out a clawed hand and tentatively dipped a finger into the sludge. He brought it to his mouth and tasted it. His eyes widened. It is different, Flarp 9 stammered. It is less gray. He took another larger portion, and somehow less depressing. He looked at Kevin with newfound respect. Human, what is this? Technique you have employed? Kevin grinned. It's called stirring, mate. Try it. You might actually enjoy your lunch for once. Flarp 9 grabbed a discarded pen from a nearby station and began to stir his own sludge with enthusiastic abandon. Soon other Zorgonians, emboldened by Flarp 9's example, followed suit. The mess hall, once a bastion of rigid conformity, erupted into a scene of chaotic culinary experimentation. The air was filled with the whirring of pens and the splattering of nutrient sludge. Glarok 4 watched in horror as his meticulously ordered mess hall descended into anarchy. The Zorgonians were stirring. They were smiling. Some were even laughing. It was a complete and utter breakdown of protocol. He clutched his head in despair. This human, this insignificant, coffee-obsessed human, was driving him insane. The chaos in the mess hall, however, was merely a prelude to the true pandemonium that Kevin was about to unleash. After his culinary intervention, Kevin was returned to his holding cell, but not before Glarok 4 ordered a thorough search of his person. It was during this search that the Zorgonians discovered what they believed to be a weapon of unimaginable power, Kevin's multi-tool. To Kevin, it was just a handy gadget he'd picked up at a hardware store back on Earth. A simple, folding tool with a knife, screwdriver, pliers, and, most importantly, a corkscrew. But to the Zorgonians, it was an enigma wrapped in metal, an artifact of terrifying complexity. The multi-tool was immediately confiscated and taken to the ship's research lab for analysis. The lab, usually a place of quiet, methodical scientific inquiry, was thrown into a frenzy of activity. Scientists in white lab coats, or the Zorgonian equivalent, which involved shimmering iridescent scales, swarmed around the multi-tool, poking, prodding, and scanning it with a variety of exotic instruments. The initial reports were perplexing. The device was constructed of unknown alloys, its internal mechanisms defying all known principles of Zorgonian engineering. Its various appendages, the knife, the screwdriver, the pliers, seemed to serve no logical purpose. "It is a weapon," declared Xylar II, the ship's chief science officer, a being of immense intellectual capacity, or so he claimed. But of what kind? Its function is obscure. The Zorgonians subjected the multi-tool to a battery of tests. They blasted it with energy weapons, submerged it in corrosive acids, and even attempted to disassemble it with microscopic lasers. The multi-tool remained stubbornly intact, its various components glinting mockingly under the lab lights. The more they tested it, the more paranoid they became. "Its resistance to our weaponry is unsettling," reported a junior scientist, his voice trembling slightly. "It is as if it were designed to withstand any form of attack." Xylar II, his iridescent scales flashing with agitation, paced back and forth in front of the examination table. This human, he knew. He knew what he possessed. He allowed himself to be captured, knowing that we would discover this instrument of destruction. Meanwhile, back in his holding cell, Kevin was enjoying a nap, completely oblivious to the existential crisis he had inadvertently triggered. He awoke to find Galactic 4 standing outside his cell, his exoskeleton gleaming ominously in the dim light. "Human," Galactic 4 growled. "We know about the weapon." Kevin blinked, still half asleep. "Weapon? What weapon? Oh, you mean my multi-tool? Yeah, that thing's a lifesaver." Galactic 4's eyes narrowed. "Do not attempt to deceive us, human. We have analyzed its composition, its function. We know it is capable of unimaginable destruction." Kevin stifled a yawn. "Destruction? Mate, it's got a corkscrew. You can't destroy much with a corkscrew unless you're really dedicated to ruining a bottle of wine." Galactic 4 was unimpressed. "Silence. Explain its purpose. What are its capabilities? What is your plan?" Kevin sighed. This was going to be a long explanation. "Okay, look," Kevin said, trying to sound patient. "It's a multi-tool. It's got like a little knife for cutting things, a screwdriver for screwing screws, pliers for plying, and yeah, a corkscrew for opening bottles of wine or, whatever you guys drink. Sludge, maybe?" Galactic 4 stared at him blankly. "Screws? Wine? These words, they have no meaning in our context." Kevin groaned. "Right, of course. Look, can I just show you? Maybe a demonstration would help." Galactic 4 hesitated, then reluctantly agreed. "Very well. But attempt no treachery, human. We will be watching you." The Zorgonian officers gathered in the war room, a chamber usually reserved for plotting. Galactic conquests now repurposed for an emergency meeting about Kevin. Holographic displays flickered with schematics of the multi-tool, annotated with frantic Zorgonian script. The tension was palpable, thicker even than the ship's recycled air. "He claims it is for screwing screws?" Xylar II's voice dripped with incredulity. "Such a primitive function cannot possibly be its true purpose. It must be a deception, a carefully constructed facade." Galactic 4, his mandibles clicking nervously, added, "And the corkscrew? A device for breaching fortified containers, perhaps? Or some form of biological weapon designed to extract vital fluids?" A junior officer, Trilok 7, dared to voice a dissenting opinion. Perhaps the human is telling the truth. Perhaps it is simply a tool, a multifunctional implement for mundane tasks." He immediately regretted his words as the senior officers turned their multifaceted eyes upon him, radiating disapproval. "Silence, Trilok 7, barked Xylar II. "Your naivete is disturbing. Do you not understand the gravity of the situation? This human possesses a device of unknown capabilities, and he claims it is for opening bottles. It is clearly a ploy, a cunning attempt to lull us into a false sense of security. Internal memos zipped across the ship's network, each more paranoid than the last. Subject Kevin, threat level elevated. Possible infiltration by human agents, increased security. Protocols. Suspect device may cause unspecified catastrophic event. The ship's captain, Zorgon Prime, secluded himself in his private chamber, the weight of command pressing down on him like the crushing depths of his home planet's oceans. He reread the transcripts of Kevin's interrogation, searching for a clue, a hidden meaning, anything that could explain the human's baffling behavior. A corkscrew, he muttered to himself, massaging his temples with his four-fingered hand. What manner of weapon conceals itself as a corkscrew? Is this some form of psychological warfare? Is he attempting to drive us mad with his illogical pronouncements? Zorgon Prime considered his options. He could order Kevin's immediate execution, eliminating the threat before it could manifest. But what if the multi-tool held a key, a vital piece of information that could benefit the Zorgonian Empire? The risk was too great. He slumped back in his command chair, the holographic display reflecting in his weary eyes. He was a seasoned veteran, a veteran of countless interstellar battles, a master strategist who had conquered entire galaxies. And yet, he was utterly stumped by a single, sarcastic human and his multi-tool. By the great Zorgon, he whispered, I am beginning to question my own sanity. He then activated his private comm channel, and after a long pause he spoke. Get me the ship's psychiatrist. I think I need to talk. Kevin leaned back against the cold metal wall of his holding cell, letting out a long theatrical sigh. He'd spent the last few days fielding bizarre questions about his weapon and enduring the Zorgonians' increasingly frantic attempts to decipher its purpose. Honestly, it was getting boring. He grabbed the multi-tool from where the Zorgonians had cautiously placed it, encased in a clear, energy-shielded box, no less. Kevin rolled his eyes, flicking open the miniature containment unit with a well-practiced twist. All right, you overgrown squids, he called out to the observation cameras. Time to end this intergalactic farce. A contingent of Zorgonian guards, led by the ever-exasperated Xylar II, arrived moments later, weapons raised. They watched with tense anticipation as Kevin approached a sealed container of the ubiquitous Zorgonian nutrient sludge, a gray, gelatinous substance that tasted vaguely of despair. Kevin held up the multi-tool, selecting the can opener attachment with a satisfying click. Observe, he announced with a mischievous grin, the true purpose of this devastating weapon. With practiced ease, he punctured the top of the sludge container and cleanly sliced around the lid. The Zorgonians gasped, not at the weapon's destructive power, but at the sheer audacity of the act. Kevin pried the lid open, revealing the unappetizing contents within. He then proceeded to consume a spoonful of the sludge with a deliberately exaggerated expression of enjoyment. See? Kevin said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Not a doomsday device, just a can opener. A really handy can opener, I might add. He paused, letting the revelation sink in. Brought it special, you know. Heard your food was an acquired taste. He gestured around the room. Turns out acquiring it is the real problem. The Zorgonians stood dumbfounded. All their paranoia, all their elaborate security measures, all their frantic analysis, for a can opener. Xylar II's multifaceted eyes narrowed. You mean, to tell us, he stammered, that this entire time, you merely wished to conveniently access our nutrient rations? Kevin nodded, a picture of innocent sincerity. Yup, figured if I was stuck here, I might as well eat in comfort. You guys really need to work on your presentation, by the way. Ever heard of plating? It was in that moment that the absurdity of the situation reached its peak. The fearsome, human weapon was nothing more than a tool for culinary convenience, and the Zorgonian Empire had been thoroughly, utterly, and hilariously outsmarted by a hungry human with a multi-tool. The effect on the Zorgonians was immediate and profound. For generations, they had endured the bland, difficult-to-access nutrient sludge, accepting it as a necessary component of their militaristic discipline. Now, Faced with the ease and convenience offered by Kevin's multi-tool, the foundations of their society began to crack. One Zorgonian guard, Xyler 7, tentatively reached for the multi-tool. With trembling appendages, he mimicked Kevin's actions, opening his own container of sludge. The lid popped off with a satisfying hiss, revealing the gray, gelatinous mass within. A glimmer of something akin to excitement flickered in his multifaceted eyes. He devoured the sludge, a previously unimaginable expression of joy spreading across his face. It is so simple," he exclaimed, his voice filled with a newfound wonder. "Why have we not considered this before?" The revelation spread like wildfire. Soon, the entire crew of the Claw of Xylar was engaged in a frenzy of can opening. The sterile corridors echoed with the sounds of popping lids and delighted slurps. Ranks blurred as low-level grunts and high-ranking officers alike indulged in the previously forbidden pleasure of easily accessible sustenance. The mess hall transformed into a scene of chaotic revelry. Zorgonians danced and cavorted, waving opened sludge containers in the air. The rigid protocols of the war cruiser were abandoned as they reveled in their newfound freedom. It was, in essence, a Zorgonian revolution, sparked by a human, a multi-tool, and a desperate need for better dining options. Captain Xylar 1, the epitome of Zorgonian discipline, watched the unfolding chaos from his command deck in horror. His multifaceted eyes darted frantically as he witnessed the complete disintegration of his ship's order. The crew he had meticulously trained was now a horde of sludge-guzzling hedonists. "Order! Order!" he shrieked, his voice cracking with desperation. "Return to your stations, this is madness." But his pleas fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the joyous cacophony of the reveling Zorgonians. The Claw of Xylar, once a symbol of Zorgonian might, was now a floating party barge, fueled by nutrient sludge and the sweet taste of rebellion. Xylar 1 slumped into his command chair, his appendages trembling. The weight of his failure crashed down upon him. He, the esteemed captain, had lost control of his ship, his crew, and his very sanity. All thanks to a human and his infernal can opener. The Zorgonian captain covered his eyes and let out a long, mournful wail. "What have I done?" The Zorgonians wasted no time in processing Kevin for release. They practically shoved him into his awaiting spacecraft, babbling apologies and promises to erase all records of his capture. Xylar 1 himself, looking haggard and sporting nutrient sludge stains on his uniform, oversaw the departure. "Go, just go," he pleaded, his voice hoarse. "Never return. You are too dangerous. Not because of your weapon, but because of your influence. We cannot risk another culinary uprising." As Kevin's ship detached from the Claw of Xylar, he couldn't help but grin. He watched as the war cruiser, now adorned with makeshift banners fashioned from opened sludge containers, limped away into the inky blackness. He chuckled, imagining the chaos he had unleashed upon the Zorgonian Empire. Back in his ship, Kevin settled into his pilot's chair, a contented sigh escaping his lips. He reached into a cooler, retrieving a frosty bottle of earth beer. "Well, that was interesting," he muttered to himself. "Time for a little taste of home." With a flick of his wrist, he produced the multi-tool. He popped the cap off the beer with practiced ease. As the familiar hoppy aroma filled the cockpit, a mischievous glint sparkled in his eye. He took a long swig, savoring the taste. "You know," he mused, gazing out at the star-dusted expanse of space, "there are so many cultures out there just waiting for a little cultural exchange, and I just happen to have the perfect tool for the job." Kevin smiled, already plotting his next adventure, one can opener at a time.